This podcast is recorded on stolen and unceded Aboriginal land.
We acknowledge the First Nations and elders of this country and join their calls for justice. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Kamala Harris takes swipe at Musk and warns world to remember the 1930s at Gold Coast Real Estate Conference.
Slay. Okay. Okay, Queen.
Now, people don't know, this is why Emerald was off last week and she didn't get to chat to Larissa Waters because you were attending the Gold Coast Real Estate Conference to listen to the CEO,
meeting my true hero.
Our true hero, Kamala Harris.
Yeah, I do find it. Yeah, why didn't the Greens put up Kamala for leadership? Racism?
Question mark. I saw that headline and I was just like, what? I mean, that's just everything about late stage capitalism in a collection of words there that you need to know. Kamala Harris has criticized Elon Musk, noted it's important that we remember the 1930s, and raised concerns about AI when speaking to an audience of 4,500 real estate agents at an industry conference on the Gold Coast.
Unracist real estate agents, though. So, yeah. They exploit black and white tenants equally.
Yes, they're not racist. Yes, they don't see color. They just see rent. That's all they see.
I don't see color. I just see rent.
The former US Vice President, who is visiting Australia for the first time. Imagine the first time coming to Australia to attend a real estate conference. Oh, the Gold Coast. Was the guest of honour at the 2025 Australian Real Estate Conference on Sunday. She was interviewed for an hour on stage by the real estate industry veteran John McGrath, introduced by McGrath as one of the most successful women in history.
Okay. I mean, she lost, but what is success really, you know?
I guess first woman vice president, I guess. I mean, I'm not the first woman vice president, so who am I to speak?
That's true, nor am I. So who am I to speak on this?
With her best work ahead of her, she was the US vice president. She's now speaking at a real estate conference at Gold Coast, but this lady's just on the up and up.
Also, can we just quickly, so this is the first time she's come to Australia. It's for this Gold Coast Real Estate Industry Conference.
Yes.
Which implies that they must be paying her a tidy sum.
So much money.
There is a reason that she's decided to make the trip when she refused in the past.
Yes.
But at the same time, I thought that real estate industry was really struggling. Like, it's really hard for landlords and all the mum and dad landlords that must be, running this industry, right? So it's confused. They must have really, scraped together. They've gone without dinners and, 6th, 7th houses in order to get Kamala. And I really respect that.
Daddy, why don't we have another investment property this Christmas? Well, little Timmy, we're saving up to bring the most successful woman in history to come and speak to us at our wonderful conference.
Wow. And that's allyship.
I would love to get an estimate because, you heard about Hillary Clinton giving speeches on Wall Street, like I think, $200,000 or $300,000, but that was for a half-hour keynote in New York. Kamala Harris. I don't know what you get as a US vice president once you leave office, whether you still
do you get
have Secret Service?
Do you get
give a shit about
something,
but
surely.
Anyway, she's got to do the flight and come and do the speak. She walked on and off stage to a standing ovation and the strains of Beyonce's Halo. And she just gave some great advice to all those real estate agents out there. Advice like this. I don't hear no. I eat no for breakfast.
Oh.
I don't hear no until maybe the 10th time.
Ooh, not going to sound good on the court transcript, I tell you what.
I tell you, didn't you know Joe Biden when he was sniffing women's hair, that's for sure. I can't begin to tell you the number of times it has been explicitly or implicitly said to me, it's not your time, you're not ready, they're not ready. Don't you listen. And this is, again, what I mean about applauding ambition. I don't know, Kamala, I think America's told you pretty clearly that it was a no from them. And
she didn't hear it. She's going to run for president 10 times, and only then will she give up.
I read an article. It was just she didn't say anything about real estate. It was just no tips or tricks or insights into, how to leverage negative gearing to your benefit, how to best serve your landlord clients. As far as I can tell, she's fuck all advice.
She's a woman though, Tom. So
I
applaud her. I don't know about you, but I do.
If it's good enough for the Labor Party in WA to tick it off, I don't understand why it took so long for the Federal Labor Party to tick it off, other than the need to win seats in capital cities against the Greens.
We're stuck with the hosts of Chapo Shithouse podcast.
Serious danger to Australia.
I applaud women too, and I applaud people listening to this podcast, Serious Danger, a podcast about green politics in Australia. It's not an official Greens Party podcast. It is produced by Michael the Griffin. I'm Tom Ballard, coming to you from Naarm, the lands of the Wurundjeri and Boonwurrung people. Hello, Emerald Moon. Welcome back.
Hello. Thank you for having me back. I'm Emerald. I'm a Manjin on Yagara and Turrbal country, and I'm a little bit sick. So please don't make me talk too much, but then I'm going to get into talking about superannuation and you won't be able to stop me then.
It'll be electric. Yes, we're going to talk about what the go is with this big policy fight over Labor's plans to tax super and the right wing and anyone with heaps of money in their super account losing their minds.
Yeah.
And of course, Labor's disastrous and evil and immoral and bullshit decision to approve Woodside's insane project on the Northwest Shelf in WA and do Woodside's bidding. It's
what a week.
It's bad. Yeah, they're straight in. They didn't waste any time. Big thanks to our new patrons for supporting the show, to Roma Oxyhixo, Anna Lou, Chris, DC, thank you, Vicky, Nakal, James, Keish, Royden, TJ, and Russell. We love you all very much. Thank you for supporting our show and making it possible. For just $3 a month, you get that bonus content via our Patreon. Big thanks to Adam, Patreon, who just edited a membership from $3.69 to $3.
Big thanks.
Well,
wow, they took their $69 back for themselves.
Indeed.
Consent can be withdrawn at any time. So I respect that. You take your $69 back, Adam. That's just fine.
I just like that. I mean, actually, this is Adam Band.
Yeah.
But he did that amount, did the funny joke, and then after a while thought, oh, it's not actually that funny.
Well, he's reassessing his income stream at the moment and trimming from the budget, I'm sure.
We just released a new Patreon episode this week. We get a new full bonus episode every fortnight if you're a patron. And we continue our reading series, reading Paddy Manning's Inside the Greens. Moving on, Chapter 9, CPRS, deep in CPRS, the ins and outs. Finally, we're talking about it. Once again, the Greens illustrating how terrible they are on the environment, and they should trust Labor, the party that just approved a massive carbon bomb when it comes to climate science. So very interesting to listen in the context of this week's news. Should we talk about the good news that we have for our beautiful people based in Meanjin? The good news is we are doing another live show. Holy heck. I know this is all a bit last minute, kind of. It's pretty soon, but the stars have aligned. I'm going to be in Meanjin, Brisbane, as is Emerald, as is the Griff, and we're going to do another live show at our wonderful home in Brisbane at the Good Chat Comedy Club. This is happening on Saturday, June 21st at 1 p.m. Good Chat Comedy Club is at 52 Petrie Terrace. Tickets are on sale right now. They just went on sale this week. We're out there. We'd love you to come along. We've sold out our shows when we do them in Brisbane before. All tickets are just $27, and the link to buy tickets are in the show notes.
Yes.
Guest still TBA. We will let you know exactly who's going to be joining us on stage in the coming weeks. But it'll be great. You know, after a difficult couple of weeks and some shitty results, it'll be nice to be in a room full of comrades and danger dogs and danger heads and reflecting on where we're at and where we're going to go next. So come along.
It always is. If you haven't been to a live show before, I highly recommend coming along. If you have been before, please come again.
That's crucial. We need return, please. I also thought, should we do an update on merch? Is there much Serious Danger merch still kicking around?
There is, yeah, particularly if you're coming along to the live show, we will have bags and stickers there. We have the bags with the really cool Pressure Works design by Sam Warman on them. These beautiful black tote bags, and we have some stickers with that design, as well as the Join the Greens political party one and some Serious Danger stickers. So you can come say hello and grab some of those at the show, but they're also on the website if you want to snap them up beforehand, and we'll ship them out to you.
Saturday, June 21st in Brisbane, live show at Good Chat. We'll see you there, team.
We've been through enough.
And now the Albanese government has greenlit its most polluting fossil fuel project yet, the Northwest Shelf.
I'm devastated. This climate bomb has been approved while the communities here on the mid-north coast are still living through yet another climate-fueled disaster.
All week, my community has been cleaning up the aftermath of the record-breaking flood that took the lives of 5 people,
that damaged nearly 10,000 homes,
and left 50,000 people isolated.
Communities just like mine also survived
the ex-tropical cyclone Alfred,
the 2021 and 2022 floods,
and Black Summer fires.
In fact, we're all still recovering from these disasters.
And meanwhile, communities across the Torres Strait are facing rising sea levels, which threatens their lands, their agriculture and their homes.
These disasters are not natural anymore.
Climate pollution from the burning of coal, oil and gas
is making extreme rainfall events more frequent and more intense in Australia.
And communities like mine are suffering the consequences again and again. I thought this government was elected on a climate mandate.
I voted for clean energy, stronger climate targets,
and holding big polluters to account.
Not climate destruction.
Please, Prime Minister, support our communities,
not corporations.
Confirmed. Labor still sucks. For people, and I include myself in this number, for dumb, naive idiots who thought that maybe they'd suck a little bit less or wouldn't do the bad suck thing with this new massive majority government.
Having a mandate.
An incredible mandate.
Australians voted for climate action, etc., etc.
No. On Wednesday, our brand new Environment Minister, Murray Watt, gave provisional approval for Woodside's Northwest Shelf to operate for another 40 years.
Oh, is that all?
Extending its environmental approval beyond the previous end date of 2030.
Well, 40 years, that'll bring us just up before 2050, which is the target that we've set for net zero, right? I'm not very good at maths, but I assume...
No, that's actually beyond 2050. But as our fantastic Prime Minister, it was 2070, in fact. But as our wonderful Prime Minister said, net zero doesn't mean zero, you idiot.
I'm such a fool. They're going to be using CCS, which is very real and actually works. Not to mention, it doesn't even account for all the fucking, fugitive methane emissions that gas already creates that aren't properly accounted for. But anyway.
Right.
Yay.
Or the emissions that are emitted in other countries, our Scope 3 emissions. Is that, when they say net zero, that is actually Australia's net zero too, which doesn't include Scope 3 emissions, I assume? Is it?
Yeah, right. No, it's just Australia.
I mean, look, we touched on this briefly on last week's episode when I chatted to Larissa about this terrifying project. That was, of course, before we actually had the decision. But, quick recap. It's real bad. According to the Climate Council, this project is a carbon bomb. It will unleash 4.4 billion tonnes of climate pollution over its lifetime. It will make it Australia's second worst polluting fossil fuel facility. The Burrup area, by the way, is the largest fossil fuel project in the Southern Hemisphere. I didn't realise, but there you go. So it accounts for 10 years' worth of Australia's total annual emissions from a single project, right? So all the emissions Australia puts out every year, times that by 10, that's the amount of emissions coming from this single project. Wild.
We're fucked.
It is twice as polluting as the coalition's nuclear policy would have been. It completely undermines any efforts for Australia to reduce our emissions, of course. So the Greens say this decision effectively kills the prospect of us reaching net zero by 2050. It flies in the face of all the science, which tells us that we can't keep opening new fossil fuel projects. That's unequivocal. Doesn't even make economic sense. The vast majority of this gas is going to be exported. Western Australia doesn't even need more gas. We have plenty of gas. We're currently oversupplied. Woodside pays bugger all in taxes and royalties. The Conservation Council of Western Australia has pointed out that WA drivers pay more in car registration than the gas industry pays in royalties. So it seems pretty good. And the project threatens to erase the oldest rock art gallery in the world at nearby Birrajuga. Watt's decision comes with strict conditions, particularly relating to the impact of air emissions levels from the operation of expanded onshore Karratha gas plant. But please remember, under our extremely fucked up environmental laws and the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act, the Environment Minister is not allowed to consider the climate impacts of a project like this. Can't even consider it. Can't enter their little head.
What about the safeguard mechanism? I thought there is a safeguard made that good and it was going to work and stop things like this from happening.
And I believe that is genuinely an approach from the Albanese government saying we're all sorted, guys, because we have the safeguard mechanism which encourages fossil fuel companies to slowly reduce or to cap their emissions. But of course, the safeguard mechanism does not factor in the Scope 3 emissions and the emissions from this gas as it's exported and burnt in other countries, which heats up the planet, the same planet that Australia can be found upon and that we live on, you see.
Yeah. It's justifiable on a climate basis because it's all going to be exported offshore, but it's justifiable on an economic basis because we need domestic supply. Someone's fucking lying, aren't they?
All makes sense to me. Woodside now has about a week to consider the decision. They'll think about it very carefully and they'll look at these restrictions and they'll go, well, no, this is a good compromise, actually. And once that happens, then the matter is apparently considered final. Over to you, Emerald.
Over to me.
Yep, your response. We cross now live to Emerald Mood to find out what she thinks about this wonderful decision.
Thanks, Tom Ballard. Well, I think it's quite bad. I don't know. Who is stoked? Like, I guess it's one of those things where, I go, how far outside my bubble do I need to look to see the world, to see the Australia where a majority of people are like, yay, Northwest Shelf finally approved.
Right.
Got that extension. Thanks, new government. This is what I voted for. Am I insane to think that that's insane?
That is insane, yes. That is totally insane. Yeah, it's very hard to figure out what to say here. I mean, I think look back now and think it was crazy to think there was any chance of them not doing this. Of course, this is exactly what Labor was going to do. Of course, they delayed the decision till after the election in a very cynical move, in my view. And again, I'm such an idiot thinking that this massive win at the election, this increased majority, this extraordinary political capital, the collapse of their political enemies, to think in that moment you would go, well, here is a chance for Labor to make the actual hard decision or to actually do something in line with progressive values and to actually do something in line with climate science. And you go, no, it's actually the complete reverse. They've got so much political capital now that they can do the tricky thing and discount the left and discount the environmental movement and anyone within the Labor Party who has climate concerns and say, no, fuck you. We don't need to listen to you. We have all the power in the world. We're going to use this opportunity to do the tough thing and beat back the left, not the reverse.
I mean, it's the logical fallacy of being like, in order to get Labor to be more like the Greens, we need to vote for Labor. We need to increase Labor's power instead of the Greens. It's like, it just actually doesn't make sense. You don't improve an institution by endorsing its current approach wholeheartedly. And not to sound fucking cringe, but absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Like, you're not going to increase positive outcomes of democracy by increasing a majority in a parliament like this.
Nope. Do you think, just on a personal level, the climate dread that we all experience, at least the people listening to this podcast, you and I?
Oh, yeah, I'm familiar.
When you really think about it, when you take the time, when you hear a new horrific fact or a new prediction, or you just follow the basic news, you have a basic level of concern about the continued existence of human life on this planet, right? Or at least an existence free from regular climate environmental destruction. Does Murray Watt think that? Is that in his head? Does Anthony Albanese think about that in their minds? Do they at night, are they up late thinking about what their actions in the government is going to do to the actual environment with its actual consequences down the track?
They just can't. They can't be right. I don't know. I don't know how their brains work. But I think they must have to convince themselves that they're right and good.
I just think they see it as a political problem. Like it's just a messaging issue. Like, how are we going to consider this as opposed to the actual material impacts of approving a giant gas project in the middle of a climate crisis when you have to know that's going to make the situation worse.
Yeah, but they'd be like, it's not my fault. I don't hold the power here somehow. I reckon that's how they do it. They're like, I'm doing the best that I can.
The Australian Conservation Foundation certainly takes that view. We'll get to that in a moment. An incredible quote from their CEO about how we can't blame Murray Watt. You mentioned it there. What do you think of this idea? A few people have been saying in the Climate Council's campaigns around this and videos and stuff, they're saying, hey, I thought the Australian people voted for climate action. I thought that the Labor government has a strong mandate for climate action and doing something about the climate crisis. I mean do they? Question mark?
Yeah. Like, if you subscribe to the view that the government that is elected has a mandate to do everything that's consistent with the platform on which they were elected, well, they have a mandate to approve new coal and gas.
Yeah.
That's yeah, we elected Labor and Labor does that. Like they don't, yeah. It gets much sillier when you're talking about passing legislation where they don't have a majority in the Senate. But if you're going to use that language of mandate, I don't know. But Albanese stood up after winning government and said Australians had voted for climate action. And then to turn around and do this is just evil.
It is evil. I mean, yes, but again, an election in which the major issue or the major talking point around climate and energy was based around the contrast of the coalition's horrific nuclear policy with what Labor is doing, right? This, again, another massive failure in the two-party system, right? Like that's the conversation. Those are the options that you have. So the coalition are putting forth the nuclear energy as their solution to get to net zero by 2050, and Labor are just continuing with renewables and continuing to open new fossil fuel projects. Like renewables backed up by gas.
Yeah, the other thing you have to remember is that centrists still, like, they have a strong distinction between the morality or the acceptability of coal versus gas. Like, they're still buying into the idea that gas is a, quote, transition fuel, that it's not as bad as coal. Like, I think it would be a different question for Labor MPs and the Labor Party to approve new coal, even though they still do that as well. But, like, for them, gas is, it's natural, quote unquote, natural gas. They're opening up, wow, they're helping us get off coal by opening up more gas. Pro-climate, yay.
But it's not true, Emerald. Why don't the centrists listen to the truth?
It's not true, Tom. Doesn't matter that it's not true.
Sorry, I keep forgetting that. I keep having to learn that lesson on this fucking podcast.
Yeah. Like smacking you on the wrist. Being like, get it together, Tom. Remember
but
this.
The truth, sir. The truth.
Doesn't matter.
Whoosh. On the Murujuga rock art front, I mean, this is, an extra level of tragedy mixed into all this news. It is the world's oldest art gallery. There are over 1 million petroglyphs on there dating back more than 40,000 years. I think the oldest recorded painting of a human face anywhere in the entire world. These are older than the pyramids. They're older than Stonehenge. We know acid emissions from Woodside's plants are already eating away at the ancient engravings, and a recent study found the rock surface levels to be up to 1,000 times more acidic than they were in the past. Experts are saying that this approval will mean that this precious rock art is gone within our lifetime. And I was particularly moved by traditional owner Raylene Cooper on 7:30 describing the Northwest Shelf project and its impacts as a Juukan Gorge in slow motion.
Yeah.
Now, sort of weirdly and conveniently, the decision on the approving the Woodside project comes at the same time as UNESCO is making a decision about listing this rock art for World Heritage, listing for the Murujuga rock art, okay? And this kind of blows my mind. In a draft decision, hours ahead of Watt's decision, the UN agency rejected Australia's application for World Heritage listing of the rock art because of the level of industrialisation due to the operations of a range of companies, including Woodside. The World Heritage application has been backed by both the WA and federal governments, as well as Woodside Energy and the Murujuga Aboriginal Corporation, representing the majority of traditional owners. But UNESCO referred the application back to Australia to allow it to prevent any further industrial development adjacent to and within the Murujuga cultural landscape. Okay, now tell me if I'm crazy here, but UNESCO is saying we can't list this for World Heritage because it's endangered by this industrial activity. I would have thought a better system would be UNESCO saying, this is incredibly important. This has massive cultural significance. We should absolutely list this for World Heritage, and that should come with some level of protection and restrictions on the amount of activity that can happen near it. Am I crazy?
I mean, well, increasingly my understanding of like UNESCO World Heritage listing systems is that it's not a protective or like an environmental protection system. It's effectively a tourism category. Like that, I mean, you look at the way that the reef thing has been handled, for example, they're basically like, well, we're not going to put your place on the website that lists the beautiful places that people should go and see in the world.
Yes.
Because you're destroying it.
Yes.
And the purpose of, like, I would expect that, that's not necessarily the intent of the traditional owners in trying to seek World Heritage listing. I mean, it does somewhat help your cause to argue for it to be protected, but the way that it seems to operate is just, do we recognize this as like a beautiful place to visit, like an important cultural place to visit?
Jesus. And now, now the government is, wants it both ways. They want to approve this massive project that's going to endanger the rock art, and they want UNESCO to list it as a World Heritage Site, of course. Again, you're right.
Yeah,
for
and
fucking
Woodside.
tourism and to say it. Yeah.
Well, because Woodside wants
board.
to be able to be like, yeah, we can protect a World Heritage listed site. Bullshit.
But our commitment to that ends when it restricts our commercial activity in any way whatsoever.
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's a potential spicy take for you. And I'm still sort of thinking this through. But I was struck by the amount of coverage of this story is, there's significant attention paid to the importance of this rock art and the campaign to keep it. And completely understandable. And nothing but love and solidarity to traditional owners. I love Woodside calls them traditional custodians, by the way, because they don't like the word owning, of course, because that might come with some implications. But anyway, traditional owners, First Nations people, who, of course, are victims of this country's history in so many very ways, who have seen, other sacred sites being completely trashed, destroyed by the rampages of capitalism, completely understand why they are campaigning so hard on this. And it is another appeal to people to recognize the destructive nature of this kind of project that Woodside is putting out there. However, is the climate impact of this kind of project, the whole impact of the climate impact of this particular project being approved, to you, is that in sort of a different category to the effects on local rock art and the immediate environmental impacts on the local area? I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's in a different category, but that's kind of the point of the way that our approvals system works.
Yeah.
Is it's extremely piecemeal. Yeah. And that means that then as well, any groups that seek to challenge a proposal or a development always have to pick some often niche, obscure element of like potential non-compliance with which they can hold up or thwart the approval process. And it's like that is a feature of a non-functional system, of a system that doesn't take into account holistic, like the overall impact of a development. And that's, one of the big problems. Of course, the global impact, the literal global warming, heating impact should be taken into account, but it's not. And so it kind of just falls to this.
Yeah.
I just quickly, just for the record, I think there is some dispute like among various groups over custodianship versus ownership because, some traditional owners would say that the relationship of Aboriginal people to the land is not one of ownership as recognised by, the colony, but one of custodianship. And so I think there are some groups that prefer custodians, some prefer traditional owners. It's kind of, I think it's not just necessarily Woodside, but open to dispute.
My default position is if Woodside does it, it's evil. But
if Woodside does it, it's bad. That's fair. Yeah.
Thank you. I couldn't help but notice that in pretty much all the reporting of this story, there is no mention of Woodside's role as a major donor to the Australian Labor Party. In 2022, Woodside Energy was the largest political donor from the Australian fossil fuels industry across the board. And according to Australian Donations Watch, since 2014, Woodside has donated $1.14 million to the ALP. Now, of course, that's just the declared stuff. You've got to factor in all the dark money. We know how much soirees and events where Labor MPs are sitting next to Woodside executives, how much that's counted, the revolving door between Woodside and members of the ALP. And I'm actually not sure whether that includes donations at the state level. And of course, Woodside, massive donor to WA Labor. Just nowhere in the coverage of this is, at least as far as I could see, is that fact acknowledged or interrogated. And I really think that the media thinks that there is this category of news story, which is like where we talk about political donations, when the political donations data comes out, and then we look at that, or if we're talking about that kind of issue, then we talk about where the donations go to.
The annual news story, yeah.
Yeah. But when anything actually happens that you go, hang on, shouldn't a relevant piece of information and context here be that this company that has just received this approval donates money directly to the party that the dude doing the decision is a part of? Like, surely we should know that.
Yeah.
Surely pointing that out is not biased or conspiratorial or anything. That's just important context for people to know.
Yeah, I think there's really scant attention paid in the media to the just kind of overarching and ongoing closeness or relationships between industry and politicians. So I think, for example, the only time in recent history that I can think of where there was some good reporting on the potential link between major political donations and a particular project is like Tuna Harbour. And I think that's because you could look at the timeline and go, this significant donation was made a few weeks before a big decision was made on this project that donor was a proponent of. But like when it doesn't line up as neatly with like donation project, donation approval, the journos don't see it as a thing so much. Whereas like to me, I just look at it as an ongoing relationship, and every donation, every dinner, every lobbyist meeting, every job after retirement, that's all part of this system of closeness. But then I think that maybe the media class also just sees that as normal.
I think, yes. I think there, again, centrist journalist brain would say, unless you can prove a direct link from this donation to this decision. I'm like, fuck off, as if that's how it works. Come on. So, yes, the last thing to say is sort of the response to this decision has been generally, the usual people that you would expect have been outraged, and rightly so. We still, at time of recording on Friday morning, still no word from the Labor Environment Action Network.
Oh.
Still no word from Lean.
They must be busy on some other massive thing that's more significant than second biggest fossil fuel project in the Southern Hemisphere or whatever it is.
They tweeted nothing on the day that the decision was announced, and the only tweet since then has been this, okay? Hey, Chris Minns, here's a quick regulatory reform as New South Wales government entities make expenditure of taxpayers' money on litigation by council subject to approval or at least scrutiny.
Wow.
And every response to that post has been, what do you think about the Northwest Shelf decision? I mean, we've laughed about Lean before. We've talked about it. I have no words. I don't know how you can be in that organization, or at least, okay, if you're in that organization, at least come up with some bullshit. At least give us some bullshit. But to just be silent, to just say nothing about your beloved Labor Party approving this massive climate bomb and capitulating to the needs of the fossil fuel corporations. I mean, what do you think about this? What is your line?
I mean, it's the Environment Action Network, though, not the Climate Action Network. So they are different.
The Climate Council.
I'm sure the climate orgs will be.
They'll be fine. Climate Council does seem to have been, they've been posting a lot, and they're condemning this decision and pointing out how bad it is. I mean, again, Climate Council put out a scorecard during the election campaign in which the Greens' policy proposals were 99% good, according to them, and Labor was about 65%
Need to know
good
1%.
or something. The Australia's Conservation Foundation, I don't think they'll be condemning Labor anytime soon. This is from a Saturday paper profile on Murray Watt from last week. Murray Watt's appointment as Environment Minister gives Kelly O'Shannessy a measure of hope. I do think he's a good appointment, says the Chief Executive of the Australian Conservation Foundation, because he has a reputation for fixing really hard things. All right. And then towards the end of the article, we get this. This is Mike Seckham writing. We'll know soon enough whether he prefers jobs, mining company profits, and government tax revenues to ancient culture and global climate. The portents don't look good on this issue, O'Shannessy concedes. If he grants Woodside this extension, she says, it would be devastating, particularly for the traditional owners of Murujuga, but for everyone who needs to live on the planet.
Yep.
So if that's you, listener at home, if you're someone who needs...
Quick check.
If you
Right,
insist
that's me.
on living on the planet, then this is really bad news for you.
Devastating.
And then this is O'Shannessy still talking. But we can't blame Murray Watt. It's the Labor Party's policy to support fossil fuels. She will still think him a good choice as minister. We do need a serious reformer, and by all accounts, that's what Murray Watt is.
So her argument is kind of, I guess what I was saying, that if you think in terms of mandate, that the Australian public voted in a government whose policy is to approve new fossil fuels, and so you can't then blame that government for doing that. But I feel like it's a logical leap, and it's like a conflation of whether that is the result or like that's the policy platform that was elected and whether it's good. And just because Labor was elected on that platform doesn't mean it's good. Like,
no, it doesn't mean it's good.
Would this person say the same thing about, I was going to say Hitler, but Hitler comparisons are always feel a bit silly. But like yes. Trump, for example, were they like, well, you can't blame Trump for every stupid thing he does because that was his policy? Would this O'Shannessy person say the same thing? What a fucking stupid thing to say. Sorry. You're the Australian Conservation Foundation as well. Like, if that's your job,
think about the science and nature and criticize anyone who makes a decision that compromises the conservation of our environment.
Yeah.
Your job is not to cozy up to these people.
Yeah.
And if we can't blame Murray Watt, who can we blame then? Can we blame the entire Labor Party? Is that possible?
No,
Can we blame the fossil fuel companies that donate to them?
No, the position of people like this is you blame the Australian public because they voted for this.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do? The end of that article finishes with Watt saying, hey, every big decision I make, I know that I'm going to be making some people unhappy, whichever way I go. But that's just the role.
Wow. Can't please everyone. Haters make me famous.
Like genuinely, once again, the position, well, if the climate movement hates me and some people who like fossil fuels think I should be going further, then I think I've nailed the balance pretty right.
I mean, that's how he was sold when he was appointed. People were like, I think he'll really bridge the gap because, he's got a little bit of support from these guys, It's like, well, what that means in practice is actually just waving through approvals. Fantastic. And they'd probably like more approvals waved through. So maybe they're not entirely happy, but anyway.
And there are more approvals on the way. I mean, coverage of this. So, this is like the continuing expansion of this current project. So it doesn't increase the footprint of the particular project. It extends the life, obviously, by 40 fucking years. But even then, Woodside is looking to expand further. Celebrating Wednesday's approval, Woodside Chief Executive Meg O'Neill said the company was eyeing a new gas field in the region, Browse for which a project proposal is already under consideration. Browse is very important, particularly in the 2030s and 40s for domestic gas and energy security in Western Australia. Wow, it's crazy how important gas is. In next decade, the decade after that. I really look forward to the day when Meg O'Neill says, all right, we've got enough gas, everybody. We're all done. Actually, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's going to be really exciting.
So they want to expand, which again would open up to, drilling on the Scott Reef as well, which is where very rare turtles and whales live. And it would be a disaster.
The bum breather?
The what, sorry?
The bum breathing turtle. Is it that one? Or is that a different one?
I don't know anything about the bum breathing turtle.
There's a special bum breathing turtle that's endangered somewhere. That's what it's called.
I mean, again, yes, I don't want to bum everybody out, but it's sort of hard with this news to not do that. But I mean, what does the resistance to this look like? Because, of course, the coalition have, been wiped out. They've just announced their shadow front bench. They don't have a minister for climate change now. It's for emissions reduction. That's Dan Tehan. And of course, they support the approval. They said that we'd approve this project within 30 days of taking office if we win. So Labor's beat their record there. So well done, Labor, in that front. We've got these NGO orgs who are just falling into line. No one seems to be raising too much of a criticism. And the Greens are where the Greens are at. But this is not a legislative decision that we can use our parliamentary power to block in any way. I mean, yeah, what does it look like? What is to be done, Edward Moon? Please tell me.
I mean, surely it's still pushing for a climate trigger. I mean, I also increasingly think, is it corporate campaigning? Like the work that a lot of orgs have been doing for a while to make these ventures economically unviable by reducing their ability to get insurance, etc. But obviously it hasn't worked because this has been able to get up, but we'll see.
Yes. In fact, there's another story about Westpac relaxing their loan regulations. So it was in line with Paris, Paris saying let's keep warming to 1.5 degrees. Now they're changing it to well below 2 degrees. So as long as Westpac thinks that your project keeps us in line with that goal, then we'll absolutely give you some money. No worries at all.
I mean, to be fair, we are going to surpass 1.5 degrees. But that kind of fatalism is not helpful. They shouldn't do that anyway. They shouldn't go backwards. But just being realistic.
There you go. We got the Griff. Griff wanted to get in on this to join the pylon. Activate rant. Go.
Yeah. Hi. Griff goes off. Look, listening to that as the audience surrogate, I just wanted to raise the anger tone a touch. You're very sedate. You sound broken.
I'm sick, Mike. I am broken.
Don't let them break you. We're the good guys. They're the bad guys. Like, I'm so fucking sick of it. Like, after the election, I wasn't, you start to doubt yourself. You go, maybe, obviously the strategy didn't work and maybe we're wrong, but no, we're not wrong. They're wrong. Red MAGA, like, they talk about the Dems, they call them blue MAGA. So, Red MAGA is Labor and they're fucking evil cunts. You go to like a Friendly Geordie's comment page. It's like a Trump comment page. These people are psychos and they, if you campaigned for the Labor, your children will blame you and they'll be right to. You knew what was happening. You knew what you were doing.
Blood on your hands.
And you devoted your time to this. If you don't think you're responsible, that's willful ignorance. And I'm not going to ever be talked down to again by you. Anyway, thanks. I'm off.
Yeah, that's a
that was my
personal
rant.
address to all of Michael's shitty Labour friends.
Yeah, well, actually, there might be a slight undertone there. We'll
Except
say,
the ones that he likes.
The ones that he likes.
Anyway, bye.
Your boos mean nothing. I've seen what makes you cheer.
All right, well, if that's got you feeling a little bit low energy, don't worry, because we're about to talk taxing superannuation. Let's get animated, people. So Labor's proposal to tax superannuation earnings above $3 million is back on the agenda. The people are mad. It's going to ruin everything. Quick recap. So they announced, this is the policy that they announced last term, actually more than 2 years ago. I think we spoke about it in like March 2023. But they've announced, it looks like from the budget, that this year they're moving ahead with it. It is a 15% tax on earnings generated by superannuation assets over $3 million, which would raise about $2.3 billion in revenue this year and $40 billion over the next decade. What happened? Like, why didn't it end up getting passed last term? Do you know?
I don't know. No.
You don't know? Yeah.
Though the Labor did pull a whole bunch of stuff of their agenda in the last term, right? They were introducing stuff, pulling it left, right, and center, rushing stuff through at the end. And I guess they thought that this was one where they said, okay, we're not going to try and fight for this in Parliament this term. We'll take it to the election and do it then.
Yeah. Okay. And potentially, I guess, maybe foreseeing some of the responses and reactions that we'll get into in a little bit, they didn't want to be dealing with that ahead of the election. Maybe thinking it would be another franking credits or...
Yes, and from memory, I think the coalition was making a lot of hay out of the fact that in 2022, Labor said they wouldn't be touching super at all, and then potentially introduced this idea that they would be changing the tax arrangements for super. They said this is outrageous, and Labor said, "Fine, we won't fight for it here. We'll take it to the next election."
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I did a lot of learning in preparing for this on how superannuation is taxed. Not all directly relevant to this, but I feel as though it's kind of helpful to understand generally how the system works and where this fits in it. So this is my understanding, brief rundown. Like basically superannuation, if you consider it as a form of income, something that your employer pays you based on how much you work, it already has tax concessions applied. It's already taxed at a concessional rate because it's taxed lower than it would be if it were part of your standard income. That's kind of the deal. At the moment, before tax super contributions up to $30,000, which is the quote concessional contributions cap, they're taxed at 15% for people earning between $37,000 and $250,000 per year. So that's the amount, the 15% that you pay when the money goes into your super account. Over that $30,000 of annual contributions, they're then taxed as part of your normal income. If you wanted to, for example, make voluntary contributions. There's also the Division 293 tax, and this is where I got a bit confused because people were referring to this new proposal from Labor as the Division 293 tax, but as I understand it, there is already one. What the Division 293 tax as it stands is an extra 15% tax if your income plus your concessional super contributions are over $250,000. So, for example, you earn $240,000 per annum without super. If you put 10 or 20 grand into your super in that same year, that equals over $250,000. You then have to pay 15% on that extra over the threshold. Keep in mind that's about $750. So again, not a massive amount of money that you're paying when you're earning clearly quite a significant income. So those are the taxes that you already pay when you put money into your super. Then you have taxes on earnings. As your super is sitting there, you're getting dividends from investments, you're earning interest. In the accumulation phase, the phase before you retire, those earnings are taxed at the moment at this nominal flat rate of 15% again, but it's usually actually lower in a lot of cases, like 5 to 7.5% because of a bunch of concessions that exist, like CGT discount and franking credits, our good old friends. And also worth noting that earnings in the retirement phase, when you start using your super, are exempt. And that all of these exemptions, all these tax concessions, that's estimated to cost the budget about $60 billion in the next financial year. So we've already got these massive tax concessions.
Yep.
Are you with me so far?
I have followed you. You laid that out very clearly. Thank you very much, Emerald Moon.
Thank you. I hope I'm correct. Sorry if I'm not. This proposal, what we are talking about now that Labor has proposed, is an extra 15% tax on the proportion of your superannuation earnings, so interest, dividends, things like that, over $3 million. For example, you've got $3 million in your super account. At the end of the next year, you've got $4 million because it went up due to all those things. The proportion over $3 million is the $1 million, which is 25%. This is a bit complicated to speak out loud, but it's 25% of the total in your account. So you actually only it's 15% of 25% of $1 million, which is the earnings for the year. So you get smaller and smaller and smaller already. Keeping in mind that we're talking about amounts over $3 million. That's the starting point. That is what we are talking about. But you wouldn't know it from how fucking angry people are. This is from none other than, of course, The Australian. Some of Australia's most prominent business people have spoken out against the idea, including Wesfarmers Chief Executive Rob Scott and CSL Chairman Brian McNamee, remembering that CSL was once publicly owned, sold off by Labor. While Labor luminaries, including Paul Keating and Bill Kelty, have let their dislike of the Labor policy be known. It's also been slammed by, apart from News Corp, like ferociously, Michael Essen, former Super Association boss, Mike Fitzpatrick, who's like an energy CEO, former Reserve Bank, head, Philip Lowe. These guys are all mad. Now, why do you think, Tom, that they're so mad? Is it because this is an inherently unfair and bad policy decision?
I'd bet about $3 million on the idea that they all have more than $3 million in their super accounts.
Well, $3 million, that'd be a wise bet to make because $3 million really isn't that much. If you look at inflation in a while, it's just going to be an average amount. So we shouldn't all be talking like $3 million is so much money. False.
Fuck off.
Yeah. Okay. Quick reminder of who we are talking about here. Because like I said, we're talking about over $3 million. Very important to remember as a starting point. We only have details, I think, from the last census. Like the figures are a few years out of date. But basically in 2021, the average super balance for men was almost $190,000. For women, it was around $150,000. I'm not going to do the maths in my head, but that is much less than $3 million, to be quite clear.
It's heaps less, and I would say the median balances are significantly lower than that. Remember that average balances really doesn't help us when we've got some people out there with hundreds of millions of dollars in their super accounts. Averages can often be like quite misleading. You should look at the median, really, which will be significantly lower. Yeah, it's bonkers.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't have it in front of me, but I'm sure it would be much lower. But the big issue, like when I started looking at this, I reached a certain point where I was like, oh, it's all about self-managed super funds. So I don't know if that's been clear to you in reading about this because it's just kind of broadly presented as like everyone's super is under attack. But then when you actually get into it, it's like we are talking about self-managed super funds. What is your experience with self-managed super funds or SMSFs as they're called in the business?
My experience of them, the people who have them and care about them are the worst people around.
Yeah. So when I started working, like when I left high school, after school, I was working as a legal secretary in a small law firm in Byron. And so we were just working for a bunch of like wealthy property investors and business owners effectively. And I, as an 18, 19-year-old, was like, should I have a self-managed super fund? It seems like everyone has one of these self-managed super funds. And I was like looking into it being like, is this something that I should be doing? No. Then a normal person does not have a self-managed super fund. It is something that rich people have and rich people use as effective tax havens. And because they've got so much fucking money that they can pay someone to arrange it in a way that is beneficial to them. So self-managed super funds make up about 6% of members in Australia, but hold 24% of superannuation assets. in contrast with,
amazing.
The other fund, APRA-regulated funds, 94% of members, just 76% of assets. Self-managed super funds have significantly larger balances on average. The median near retiree couple holds a combined $1.9 million. The median retiree couple, which is 5 times the super held by a median APRA-regulated equivalent couple. And there was reporting late last year, I think in the AFR, that 42 self-managed super funds have more than $100 million in assets and receive more than $140 million a year in tax breaks.
Jesus Christ. Good system.
Yeah. So this is who we are talking about. That is who is mad, to be abundantly clear. And the reason that that's who is mad is because the way that this tax works is it will tax, quote unquote, unrealized gains on assets held by self-managed super funds like businesses, farms or properties and shares, which are some of the things that, people buy through their self-managed super funds. The thing is, and this is something that Professor Robert Brunig, I don't know if you've seen him doing a little bit of commentary on this, but he has pointed out that this isn't what super is meant to be for. He said, quote, superannuation wasn't set up to be a business vehicle where you have multiple property holdings or farms or even actual businesses run through them, which is quite common. And the only reason people are doing that is to avoid tax. He said that only taxing actual gains has encouraged people to hold onto assets, giving the example of someone holding multiple properties in an SMSF. So that's the way that it's operating right now, that's not a retirement scheme. It's just a fucking business vehicle for the ultra rich.
Nope. But remember, this is all part of Paul Keating's glorious vision for our privatized superannuation system. We could have had one big public fund where everybody's retirement savings would have gone into, would have been a massive sort of sovereign wealth fund almost, reinvesting into the country and getting good returns with low fees and no dodgy operators because it'll be regulated and overseen and wouldn't be run for profit. But no, Paul Keating said, no, people need to control their own capital. I want everybody to become little capitalists and have their own little self-managed super funds and to be directing the capital left, right, and center. And there'll be a proliferation of all these different super funds across the board that will be incredibly complicated and will make everybody take more risk as they put their retirement savings into the stock market. That's a better version. I deliberately chose that because I'm Paul Keating and I'm smart.
Yeah, well, I think there is a genuine ideological conflict at the heart of this, which is that some people would say, no, a retirement scheme should be something that enables me to accumulate as much capital as possible in perpetuity, for however many generations I can then pass that on to. And it's an inheritance scheme, which we'll get into a little bit later. But people think that that's genuinely okay. Whereas I look at it and I go, that's just not the way that our retirement scheme, let alone our broader kind of taxation and economic system should work. But there are people who believe that it should. And I think that's where we get as well, there is an ideological conflict at the heart of this debate around unrealized capital gains, which I only really started seeing this term bandied about a lot in the lead up to the federal election. I noticed that a lot of people used it to criticize the Greens wealth tax, for example, and saying, why you can't tax unrealized capital gains as though it's just inherently bad. And in certain economic circles, it seems to be accepted that, you just shouldn't do this. And I genuinely don't I think it's just an ideological difference. Maybe there is some fact that I'm missing, but I've looked and looked and looked, and I cannot see how I would have an opposition to taxing unrealized capital gains. Because I'm you're holding that wealth.
No,
I want to tax it.
Yes. And to act as if the wealth, the increased value of your property, of your assets, like your property and stuff, year on year, has nothing, doesn't bring you any benefit, as if there's no benefit whatsoever as land taxes or the increase of the assets you have as that wealth increases. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, think of the way that people whose wealth continues to accrue and accumulate and grow are treated by financial institutions or the power and influence that they can gain from that increasing wealth. Of course, it brings benefits. And of course, it has a financial upside. And yes, if we want a more equal society, we should tax that wealth and redistribute it to other people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's right. Even in a commodified economic system, it makes sense that this does actually provide a benefit in line with that. But then also if we move more broadly beyond the idea that the only thing that genuinely should be liable to taxation and kind of by extension is considered valuable is cash in the hand, is liquid assets. Like I fundamentally disagree with that. And I was looking for the right term for this, like, and I think, I mean, Marxists write in if I'm wrong, but it feels like it's this idea of commodity fetishism that I think is a Marxist concept. And it's this privileging of the idea of money itself as opposed to the value of resources and assets. Because to me, I look at it and I'm like, you've got a fucking farm held in your self-managed super fund? Like that is a significant thing that you get to have. And so you have that wealth and millions of other people don't. And it makes sense then that would be liable for taxation. But they're like, well, but it's not. I haven't sold it yet. So I haven't got the money. I haven't got the cash. Which I think is, I just disagree with that. I mean, I then move to, well, their argument is, well, the point is I haven't realized that gain. I haven't got the cash and so I can't pay the tax, which I think is pretty bullshit when you actually get down to how this is going to operate in practice, because the tax doesn't need to be paid out of the fund. That's another difference. Like I think these are the current tax on super earnings is levied at the fund level and is paid by the fund, but this is levied at an individual level. And so you pay it out of your other income and assets that I'm sure you have. If you've got more than $3 million in your fucking self-managed super fund, you can afford to pay a little bit of tax. You know what I mean? But it's also, a few people have pointed out, it could just be because a bunch of these self-managed super funds are dodgily run and not regulated. Like these bigger super funds have measures in place to like diversify assets and ensure that there's enough liquidity to pay liabilities like that. But these self-managed super funds are just doing a bunch of dodgy shit, and maybe they don't have the liquidity there, but they've got the money somewhere.
Well, this is it. I mean, surely people are freaking out because it's a tax that they might have to actually pay, right? Because this is money sitting in an account, right? And it's like the ATO can clearly calculate all this, and it can clearly see how much you're liable for, and that's tax that you can't get out of. I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other minimization schemes and lots of other things they can write off to get rid of that kind of tax, but it's like, no, you're going to have to pay this, I'm afraid, folks. That's how it's going to work, and that's why they hate it so much.
Yeah, it is like just this wild ability to disregard the enormous privilege that it is to own all of these assets and to then be like, I'm being persecuted for owning all of these assets, and it's so hard that I'm going to have to find someone to go and value all of my assets. And it's like, oh, boo fucking who? Sorry. I just boo hoo, because it really is such a tiny proportion of people. Like this is from, I think you actually pulled this out from Guardian reporting when the proposal was initially announced back in 2023, but they said to get a super balance of $3 million, you would have needed to earn $200,000 from ages 21 to 67 with 12% employer contributions and an extra $30,000 a year of voluntary contributions. You do not get there. Like the average person is not getting there. And there's this argument that, but in 10 years, $3 million is going to be a normal super balance because inflation and the fact that the threshold is not indexed is bad. But I'm like, no, it's going to take so long to get to that point. I don't know. Do you think it should be indexed?
Well, I would actually love someone to tell me the correct leftist position on indexation, particularly for income tax rates too as well. And so that we can, it does seem to me odd that the tax brackets aren't indexed. That does sort of that makes sense. So I think like bracket creep does actually become a thing. So yes, we should actually probably do that. Index would be, so indexing in this case.
But in this case.
Wouldn't make much of a difference for the super richies anyway.
That's the thing, taxed, right? Because it's such a tiny proportion of people. Yes. Like the problem is that the threshold is already fucked. And that's why, like, you know, as the Greens have been saying, their suggestion is reduce the threshold down to 2 million. Still seems quite high to me. But reduce it down to 2 million and then index it. So you kind of at least take it down from such a astronomically bizarre level for someone to have in their fucking super, as if you need $3 million to retire. Again, if we're pretending that superannuation is just a retirement fund. like, yeah, reduce that to a normal level and then you index it. And I think I agree with that.
Yeah. Has there been a lot of slippery soap stuff, it seems, as well? Like the panic and the fear and the freak out from these rich people who are worried about their $3 million super balances seem to be making the argument that if we allow Labor to tax our unrealized gains in these massive super accounts, what's next? You know, which
what's next? An actual wealth tax? Yeah.
Yes, wealth taxes, land taxes, this idea that, of taxing actual wealth, which of course would be good. I mean, my big question for you is what is the money for? I'm all up for raising revenue and taxing the rich and redistributing wealth. Thumbs up. Yes, please. But again, from my basic reading of this, very little chat about what we're raising revenue for, which I think is like really crucial. Like I really think that's how taxing proposals and the debates get away from the left, because we sort of talk about, we spend so much time on the technicalities of the tax without saying we're taxing these rich people to do this. For? Yeah.
Great question, Tom. I don't know, maybe fossil fuel handouts. Yeah, you're right. Like that would be one way that perhaps Labor could address this, but Labor doesn't, because they've got neoliberal brain and they're just like, oh, it's about balancing the books. We want to be responsible economic managers.
Right.
And that requires, you know, balancing the books, increasing government revenue and finding savings where we can. Because ultimately it's not about providing services, because again, everything is just about like fucking numbers on a sheet of paper. Not to sound woo-woo, but truly it's like, what is the actual benefit that people are receiving? It's just completely disregarded in this kind of political discourse. So abstract.
And it just means that it's so easy to political attack. I mean, look, you know, Tim Wilson's getting on board this. He's taken up as his big cause, and of course he had a lot of success with the franking credits freak out. You know, they're certainly giving a lot of energy to a pretty demoralized conservative movement across, as you say, News Corp and the coalition. They're going to jump on this and campaign against this. And unless you have a story about what the tax is for, like redistributing wealth from these very wealthy people to make life better for ordinary people through X policy. I mean, if they tied it to Medicare spending or, you know, or childcare expansion, universalism, I don't know, maybe putting dental into Medicare, you know, something that would really make people's lives better.
Yeah.
Then you've got a pretty rock solid story that you can fight against. But at the moment, it's just like, the whole ground seems to be, no, it's a fair tax and it's not too much and these people are freaking out, but no conversation about how it will benefit ordinary people's lives, which seems crucial to me.
Yeah. Again, you look at the example of Queensland Labor and Stephen Miles, and like ordinary people understand that the mining tax, increasing royalties, paid for massive energy bill rebates and 50-cent fares. And that, I think, like has forever then muted the LNP's ability to be like, no, we can't tax anyone. We can't increase royalties. It's reduced the mining lobby's ability to say that as well. So like it is possible to do that. But yeah, Labor's apparently just not willing to take that on. And I think this is the thing where, I know Brendan Coates from the Grattan Institute wrote an article in The Conversation about this in favor of the proposal and kind of the arguments for it. But I just don't necessarily agree with the framing of this, where he talks about the issue being that superannuation is not being used as a retirement vehicle. He says it's basically being used as a, quote, taxpayer subsidized inheritance scheme, because retirees have way more money than they need to live when they retire. And so they're ending up still just being net savers, still increasing their balance even when they're in retirement and taking money from it. And then they just transfer that onto their kids and, you know, create this intergenerational wealth when they die. And so their argument is, the reason that this proposal is good is because you're saying that it's going to burden the next generation because $3 million is going to be a normal super balance and then they're going to have to pay this extra tax, when in reality, this is a transfer of the tax burden from younger generations who will have to pay more tax in income taxes, for example, and other areas due to the lost revenue from these tax concessions. And I'm like, why do we have to buy into this whole thing that, again, it's just about like balancing the books? And it's like, well, the reason we should do this is because otherwise we're going to have to charge you more income tax. And it's like, there's another solution: tax big corporations. And and why don't we try to, I don't know, think big, dream big, reach for the stars, be like, let's bring in $40 billion and as you say, fund dental into Medicare, do something fucking good for once, instead of just being like, and then that don't mean we're in the black. How fucking uninspiring. No wonder people are disinterested in politics.
I mean, using this money to better fund the aged care system would be maybe a good link. You know, we're talking about people's super funds.
Raise the fucking pension, lower the retirement age. Like,
That would be good for everybody. So let's do that. Okay, so so Parliament's back in July. This looks like it could be one of the first big fights. Greens are going to push to lower the threshold and to potentially index it. That's going to be their position. And I guess between now and then, we're going to get this rabid campaign from right-wing people, which, I can't see being successful. And you would think that eventually, while the Greens will push for certain concessions, we'll eventually pass this. And of course, Labor's got a massive majority in the lower house.
I think that seems to be the vibe, right? Like, I don't know, maybe a Larissa-led Greens will be able to extract incredible concessions from Labor off the bat and negotiate perfectly, and everything will go well, and we'll have a smarter taxation system. But it does seem quite likely that they'll just end up passing Labor's bill as proposed, which is not bad, but not quite good enough, and that's where we are.
How about we say we won't pass this super tax bill unless Murray Watt reverses the decision on the Woodside Northwest Shelf decision.
Greens getting back to their roots, party about Brown. Well.
Dr. Lawrence Yunan's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change the title to Equal Pay, Thoughts and Prayers, but your salary won't get higher amendment bill is out of order as merely an attempt to criticise the bill. Change the title to Equal Pay, Do Anything Other Than Improve the Tax System amendment bill is out of order as Punch Down on Low Paid New Zealanders amendment bill is out of order as to Equal Pay. War on Women amendment bill is out of order as merely... Francisco Hernandez's tabled amendment to Clause 1 to change the title to Unequal Pay Entrenchment Bill is out of order. A War on Workers amendment bill is out of order as being merely an attempt to criticise.
That's our show, everybody. Thank you so much. Thanks for battling through there, Emerald. Much obliged. On the call to action front, I mean, anything and everything that you possibly do to try and push back against this decision, or at very least hang this decision around the neck of the Albanese government for the next 3 years. These people are climate criminals. They say one thing, they do the other. They don't care about climate change. They don't care about the future of the environment. And they've shown us through their actions. You can call Murray Watt. We'll put a link to 350.org's sort of action call there as to how to go about doing that, the direct call, and some things that you can say if you want to call him directly and express your frustration at his decision. And the big shout out to Disrupt Borough Pub people. I mean, I don't know what I can say legally or whatever, but to me, non-violent disruption of the actual processes of this project, annoying, confronting, pointing out Woodside executives in public places and saying, "What are you doing? You are trashing the future," is all entirely justified in my view. DisruptBoroughPub.com is the website for that. We've had those folks on the show before. It's a climate bomb, man. It's a climate bomb that is going to blow out any possibility of Australia meeting its obligations, and we should do everything we can every day to try and stop it.
Hear. Quickly before we go, a bone to pick with Tom. When I listened to last week's episode, I was shocked to hear that he was recommending you rate the show 4 stars. Please don't do that. 5 stars only. Can't believe he would be like, give us just whatever rating. That's very kind of you, Tom. I would like you to please give us 5 stars. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening. But yes, that does help, boost us, I think, in the little machine of podcasting world. But also, please tell a friend about Serious Danger and come to our live show in Brisbane. What's the date again? Scrolling up. Can you remember it, Tom?
Saturday, June 21st, 1 p.m. A good chat. Tickets on sale now. Come along. It will be cool.
SeriousDangerPod.com for everything you need. I'm going to bed.
Bye-bye.
Serious Danger Australia.